Hey everybody, welcome to the NEPA Scene Podcast, the only live streaming sit-down, face-to-face arts and entertainment podcast covering northeastern Pennsylvania, offering a true alternative voice in local media. We're coming to you from the NEPA Scene studio underneath Center City Print in downtown Scranton. I'm Rich Howells, the founder and editor of NEPA Scene, and tonight we're here with Wilkes-Barre Scranton indie rock band Delaware Ave, who just released their debut EP, My Friends Don't Like You. In their first ever interview, we're going to talk about how the band got started as the Crates and eventually turned into Delaware Ave, singer Chris Jackson's solo work and how he became the group's new vocalist, finding chemistry and playing their first live gigs together, the stories behind every track on their EP, their upcoming shows at the V Spot in Scranton on Friday, February 14th, and the Tap at Humboldt in Hazleton on Friday, March 21st. Opening for Aaron Fink, and much, much more. So please join our conversation with your questions and comments down below. We'll get to those later on in the show. Before we dive in, I just want to thank our sponsor, Center City Print, who provided us with this great studio space. Use promo code NEPA Scene in person or online at centercityprint.com for 10% off. Center City Print can bring your ideas to life in 4 locations: Scranton, Old Forge, Kingston, and Hazleton. These one-stop shops are locally owned and operated, offering high-quality printed products, copy and print services, and design solutions to help you, your small business, your nonprofit organization, your band, your art project, your event, or any venture thrive. Use promo code NEPA Scene in person or online at centercityprint.com for 10% off. All right, to start, could you please introduce yourselves and tell us your position in the band?
You want to start, or?
You want to, brother?
All right, so I'm Chris Jackson. I'm the singer and rhythm guitar player for the band. Colin couldn't be here tonight, but he's our lead guitar player. Our drummer, Rich Gonzalez, and then
Mason. And I'm Mason Coopers. I'm the bassist for Delaware Ave.
So let's start at the very beginning. How did you first get into music and pick up an instrument?
Yeah, I mean, I'll take the cake there. I mean, when I first started, I definitely got to give it to my brother Colin. When we first started, it was always, he was into music a lot more than me. He picked up a guitar right off the bat, and then, soon enough, I came down the road and followed suit right with him. But first I was on guitar for a while. I even started as rhythm guitarist for us, and then eventually switched to bass, and I fell in love with it all. I love every second of it, though.
So this is your first band, then?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I started right with him. It started off, I was jamming with a buddy of mine, and then I switched right in with him. He asked me to come up and jam with him, and it just took off from there, so.
Okay.
For me, it was, I've always been into music since I was a little kid. Didn't really start playing an instrument until later on, though. I used to work up at Goodfellas on Mulberry Street, and I used to go actually right down the road to back when they still had a Wells Fargo over there. I'd go there to cash my checks and everything, and they had this pawn shop across the street. And the one day I just kind of saw guitars in the window and everything, so just decided I was gonna walk in, get myself a guitar, and YouTube was my best friend for a little bit. A lot of Marty Schwartz, a lot of that stuff. But then I started taking some guitar lessons off of a guy named Alan Van Wert. He's a really good guitar player, and just kind of went from there. And then the singing came a little bit later. I knew I always wanted to write songs, which I did, but I was more guitar focused at first, kind of with it. But after a while, I just started realizing okay, well, if I can't find a singer, then I might as well just sing myself. So, that's kind of how all that came to be about, and now here we are.
It seems to be too there's a rise in singer-songwriters just doing everything now, because it's so hard to put a band together. And with today's technology, you could just play every instrument on a track or something like that.
Yeah, man, I
do that now.
I still demo out a lot of stuff just at my home studio with drum softwares, and I'll play the bass on it, I'll play the guitar on it. But yeah, when I first started off, man, I was playing for maybe like, I want to say like 3 or 4 years. Couldn't find anybody to play with, so just started writing songs on my own until like the Crates opportunity came up, and that was kind of where things took off for me. Yeah.
Well, you guys have an interesting kind of origin, because most of you were originally in a band called the Crates.
Yes.
Most members of the band, and then tell us about how that got started.
Yeah, so way back when we used to jam in a warehouse up in Scranton with all of our buddies, and a lot of it my brother could tell you more about because they started the whole thing there. But I remember they were sitting, kind of going over a whole list of names of like what we can name our band. I'm sure every band does that as
of
well.
Course,
they
yeah.
just make a giant list. But
I love reading the rejected ones.
Oh, exactly, yeah. And we kind of came to the conclusion, well, we're jamming in a warehouse, we're surrounded by boxes, so let's just call ourselves the Crates. And how I came in, like I was saying earlier, I can tell you the day too. I was sitting at a stoplight, and you know, my brother calls me up, and they were playing an open mic that night, and he was telling me, hey man, you know, why don't you come just jam for a little bit? You should play the open mic with us. So I was like, nah, you know, I'm not ready for it. I'm a little nervous. And I drove about a mile down the road, and I'm like, all right, I'm just gonna go, fuck it. And I called him up. I'm like, all right, I'm on my way. And then we kept jamming and playing shows and finding everything we could possibly do, and then it just took off from there. So I think the origin of all of it is just friendship. You know, we all like to derive from that and just be friends with all of it and have fun doing what we do. So.
Well, I met you guys back in 2021. I had to look it up. Because time is just this nebulous thing anymore.
Absolutely.
When the Crates played the NEPA Scene open mic a few times, and then the next year you were in the Big Break contest, which you guys went on to win. So tell us about that experience.
Yeah. I mean, when we first started, you know, it was all just fun. You know, I mean, there were so many good bands and so many good musicians that come out of this area that, you know, we didn't really even have it in our mind that we could possibly win something around this area. You know, that's just coming from us. But I mean, the harder we worked and the more we wrote, it's just, we loved every second of it. And we just built ourselves to be a band that can work that kind of talent and do what we do, you know?
So what made you guys end up parting ways with your singer then?
You know, there were all just some personal issues and stuff like that. You know, there's no bad blood, nothing like that. It's just some roads lead to other roads, and we ended up finding Chris, and we're very happy where we're at.
How did you guys end up meet? Were you doing like tryouts for a new singer, or how did that work?
So funny enough, I was working up at Music Around at the time, and their drummer, well, our drummer, I should say, Tom, you know, was in buying cymbals, and my buddy Anthony, who was working with me, you know, he goes like, you know, that's the Crates drummer. So I went over because obviously I wanted to make a sale, and could see he was really looking heavily at the cymbals. So I was just like, you know, yeah, let me reel this guy in. But yeah, we get to talking a little bit, and you know, he tells me, he's just like, yeah, like, you know, I'm in this band. We might possibly be looking for a new singer and stuff, and you know, so I get like, you know, his information and everything, and then later on, like, you know, I hit him up, and you know, at first it seemed like kind of like one of those things where it was just like, you know, they weren't really necessarily sure what they were doing, so I wasn't really expecting to get a call back. But then the very next day, I think it was, Tom hit me up and was just like, you know, like, are you free after work today? And I was like, yeah, and I was working in Wilkes-Barre at the time, obviously, so we went over to the practice space, which wasn't the warehouse anymore. We were practicing, like, you know, over in Plains, and went over there, met the band members, did a little jam and stuff, and yeah, again, like, I wasn't really expecting to get that much of, like, you know, a response or, like, a call back, and then the next day they were just like, yeah, so, like, are you good for practices and stuff? And yeah, I was officially a member of the band at that point. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, I feel like from the start of everything, you know, no matter what member comes in, it's just like you need a couple to just get used to everything and you get to know each other and stuff like that. But I mean, we loved you from the beginning, dude. You know, you've always been a brother of ours, and
yeah, dude, it was a lot of good times, you know, at those beginning times. Like, stressful because we had a lot of shows coming up when I first joined the band. You know, like we were playing, like, you know, this launch music conference probably, you know, like in 3 weeks, you know, after I joined the band. So it was just like, get in, you know, go straight to work, write a bunch of songs, and then just perform, you know. So it wasn't really any time to think. It was just all just, you know, doing it. But it worked out. You know?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So you guys originally kept the name as the Crates. Were you still playing the songs that you had written previously too at that point, or?
Yeah, I think at that point, we were still the Crates. We just didn't want to, like, you know, steal any work or anything like that, so we kind of just revamped.
Yeah, like the music was mostly the same because like Colin was writing a lot of the music, and then I basically just like rewrote the lyrics to all of the songs, put new melodies on them, kind of like made them my own, and yeah, just went from there. I think it was altogether like maybe like 8 songs that we rewrote in like a 3-week span of time to play that show. So yeah, it came up quick.
It did.
So when did you decide to change the name then?
So we changed the name primarily like, so we parted ways with our bass player, and then ultimately our drummer left the band, which kind of put us in a spot where it was just me, Colin, and Mason left. And things were just like, you know, we had always had like a very strong friendship, the 3 of us, you know, even from the beginning. Like whenever something would kind of go wrong, like, you know, in the band when we were a 5-piece, like we always just had like a very strong bond and connection. So we knew we still wanted to keep on making music, but at that point it just didn't necessarily feel right because we had already been through, you know, a singer, like 3 different drummers, 2 different bass players. So it was just like, all right, like, maybe it's time to try something new, something different. And, you know, I had a bunch of songs that I was, like, you know, writing at the time that just kind of became, like, this first EP. And, you know, we decided, like, all right, like, we need something that represents us better instead of, you know, like, representing this whole, you know, plethora of people that we've had involved in it, you know. So, we kind of look at it as like, you know, the Crates was everything beforehand, and now like Delaware Ave is like, you know, primarily just like the 4 of us, and like, you know,
the here and the now.
Yeah.
I feel like the biggest thing too is like, you know, even in life in general, you just sometimes you get to a point where you just need some change.
Sure.
You know? So that was the biggest thing. We need a change, and it feels good now.
Yeah, and the music also like changed a lot too. Like I said, Colin was writing a lot of the music before. And we had more of like, you know, like a upbeat, faster indie style. Like, you know, I wanted to like slow things down a little bit more when I was writing. So it's like, you know, it kind of took a little bit of a different turn. So like all the new stuff we were writing also didn't feel necessarily right putting it out under that same label, you know.
Yeah, I feel like with the Crates, we were almost like on the doorstep of alternative and stuff like that.
Sure.
This was more like the relaxed indie vibe that, you know, I feel like we can all just kind of...
Garden indie, as some like to call it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm always amused by the terms people come up with.
Yeah, all the subgenres and stuff. Yeah,
so many.
I remember when shoegaze came out. I was like, I had never heard it before, and I was like, I know exactly what that is.
Yeah.
As soon as you say that, I'm like, yep.
It's like some of the stuff just makes sense, you know, for what
totally.
it is. Yeah.
I know a lot of bands are really against labels in general. We've had that discussion many times on the show here. But I feel like at least it's kind of just shorthand just to at least get somebody's mind somewhere.
Yeah.
Because describing a sound to somebody is tough without them hearing it first. So you're just going to be like, we're an indie band.
Yeah.
And so at least
me,
puts
like,
an idea of what you are.
To me, indie's always been kind of just like a broad spectrum, too, of like music. Like, you know, you have bands like... you know, Modest Mouse that are considered indie, but then also bands that are like, you know, a little bit like on the heavier side that are considered indie, like, you know, even like people consider, you know, like bands like The Clash to be indie, or like, you know, early Smiths, you know, fucking just, it goes like, you know, on a whole range of different stuff. So it's like, you know, when I look at it as just like, you know, indie could basically describe like just about every type of music the same way alternative can describe just about every type of music. It's just
right.
Like, yeah.
See, like for us, it when we first started out, I feel like a lot of bands start out the same way. It's like it's hard for them to determine what their sound is.
Right.
So like, you know, for us, we've asked the question dozens of times, like, what is our sound? What genre would we label us under? But I think we've kind of settled in the indie genre.
Yeah.
You know.
we write what we like, and we let everybody else kind of decide what they want to call it. You know,
right. Yeah, it's the hyper specific genres that I find.
Yeah.
Like indie alternative, I get that. Then it gets into like, you know, all these little like descriptors, or, you know, indie / alternative. It's just pick one, you know.
I'm not with all that.
Yeah, it gets it all kinds. You know, somebody asked in the comments earlier, so I wanted to ask. They're like, I grew up on a Delaware Avenue. So they want to know where the name comes from.
Funny enough, I actually saw that. I was tempted to reply to the comment, but then I was like, then they wouldn't have a reason to watch the show.
Exactly. All right, so this is for you.
Gotta reel them in, but funny enough, it's actually the street that I was living on at the time that like I was writing all the songs for this EP. It's over in Oliphant, right off of Lackawanna Avenue. It's called Delaware Ave. It's also like the same street that O-Town is on, and Ken's Bar. So there's a couple of cool things out over there. But yeah, I lived there for probably, I want to say the better part of like 4 years, you know, so it was just kind of to me, like, you know, I lived there alone, and just like, you know, had gone through so much, and it was just really like, you know, kind of a sacred sort of space to me. And at first we were, you know, kind of undecided about it, because like I knew I wanted to name the project that, but, you know, obviously, like, you know, it's a democracy, so we kind of have to all weigh in on it. And yeah, we weren't really decided on it at first, but then like as we went about just making the music and stuff, eventually we were just like, yeah, this just fits our vibe.
I agree. Yeah, because even I at first was like, I like it, but like, you know, especially being the Crates for so long, it felt different changing the name. So it was hard to settle on, and we did the same thing too. We wrote a list like what do we choose from.
No, we went through so many different names before we were just like that. But I had it set in my mind pretty much like right off the bat. Like as soon as I brought it to the table, I was just like, this is what.
And we kept driving back to that too. We're like, well, what about this? And Chris is like, I really like Delaware. And correct me if I'm wrong. Most of the songs on the EP were written at that address as well, so I feel like that's where a lot of the name derived too. So
I feel like a lot of times that first instinct, whatever is in your gut, that's usually what you should go with.
Yeah, and then especially as soon as we started, you know, building the new music and just writing it all, it just felt right doing it under that name. It just I needed a little bit of time, at least personally, but then it just started feeling right, you know.
It grew on us.
Yeah, for sure.
So, when did you feel that these songs were ready to record? That you had honed in on, you know, 5 songs in this case?
So I started off pretty much every song that I write for the band. I start off with just like acoustic guitar, just like on my couch, and I'll record like a voice memo of it. And then from there, we basically just, you know, get together as a band. We hash stuff out, talk about what could be, you know, potential for certain parts. You know, certain parts we'll get rid of, certain parts we'll kind of like revamp. I think it also really matters too when you're writing stuff acoustic. You're really like trying to pick up the entire rhythm of the whole song, where it's like, you know, in a band setting you have other things that are driving the rhythm. You have the drums, you have the bass, you have, you know, rhythm guitar, and then obviously lead. So it's like it took a lot of work just kind of working out where was gonna go where, or what was gonna go where, essentially. But after about probably, because I wrote all those songs in a very short span of time. I want to say they all came in about, you know, maybe like a month and a half. And then from there, we hashed them out for, I want to say, maybe another good like 2 months. And at first, like, my mind wasn't even really on recording. You know, my mind was just kind of how it always is, which is just like write the next song, you know, make the next thing happen. But our drummer, Rich, you know, was actually the first person to be like, okay, like, so when are we going to go and record these? You know, we got like 5 songs here, and I was just like, yeah, like, we could actually go record them. Like,
it just wasn't in our mind.
Just a crazy concept to me at the time, but I was just like, yeah, we could do this. And So we booked some time at Joe Loftus's studio, and probably, I want to say, within about 6 sessions, it was, all done. We had spent a ton of time just, like, practicing them, like, down in Rich's basement beforehand. So when we did go, we were, like, absolutely, like, knew what we were doing, didn't really have to make any changes. Just went right in, got it done, and yeah, I mean, Joe did a fantastic job of mixing it and making what it really was, and yeah, we couldn't have been happier with how the whole thing came out.
Yeah, and I got to give it to Chris too, because I mean, we're all busy. Of course, we still have our day jobs and everything. So, but there was countless hours. Even if other members couldn't make it, that Chris was in there like perfecting it. Making sure like, and when he sent us the final tracks, I called him, I'm like, dude, like this shit is awesome. And he's like, I told you I was not leaving there until it sounded how we needed it to sound.
Yeah, I was there for literally every single session.
Yeah, because I mean, it was difficult for me too, because I mean, when we first started bringing all these songs to the band is when I was still kind of getting a little new on bass. Like I said, I played rhythm guitar before that, so I kind of had an idea. But the biggest thing for me was just getting an instrument I wanted to play on. So we had like this little shitty bass that I was playing on for a little bit, and I was like, guys, I'm not feeling it.
It wasn't even using a bass amp. He was using like a guitar amp at first, so we had to get him a bass amp.
Yeah, and then finally I did pick up a bass of my own, and that's when I really fell in love with it, and especially being part of the project itself, making bass lines that I could write, not just that I like, but I could like for the song. That's really how I tend to write them all. I just derive it around the song. So, but yeah.
So, you put together the actual recording pretty fast. And Joe's great. I mean, he really, as soon as you hear the production on any of this stuff, it's something he did. So, I guess we should get into the tracks themselves. If that works for you guys.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So we have a little section of the podcast that we do called The Breakdown, where we go track by track on an artist's latest release to hear the inspiration and stories behind each song. So this can be about the lyrics, the composition, the recording, all of it, whatever you think you want to share, you think is the most interesting aspect of the song. So your debut EP, My Friends Don't Like You, was released on January 2nd and is available now on all streaming platforms. So let's get into it. The first track is 27.
Yeah, funny enough, January 2nd is actually my birthday, so I turned 27 on the day that we also released 27.
Okay.
But for me, it was... 27 was like a song that initially kind of came from not like the bunch of songs that I had written, during that time. Like I wrote probably, I want to say like 10 songs within the span of like a month and a half, and 27 was the only song that was on the EP that wasn't part of that whole process. Colin actually wrote the like all the music for it, and even that intro part that he sings, he wrote all that. And for me, it was coming into it, writing lyrics to it. I was going through kind of like a rough patch, like, a breakup at the time. And it was the whole EP itself kind of just like tells a story of that, just both like the during and after process of just like, going through it and then having to get over it. But 27 really kind of like embodied, the idea of just like, the first signs of seeing something wrong in this relationship, really like coming to the point where it's just like, because when obviously they say like love is blinding, when you're in love, you overlook a lot of things, red flags, whatever you want to call them. But, as you start to get more to the point where, you get over something, you start seeing all of the little things that were wrong the entire time that you just held back and never really thought to say to the person at that time. So that's kind of what 27 meant the most for me. Even just hearing Colin's part, when he first showed it to me, that was like the first thing that popped into my head, was just like, wow, like this really, to me, just sounds like everything like I've been wanting to say but just haven't said for a very long time. So I kind of tried to make it about that, you know, just the first signs of waking up, you know, to the reality of the situation. And the music, you know, as far as that goes, like, was probably, like, my favorite on the whole song, you know, like, the chord progression, everything, how we wrote it, like, it all comes together. And to me, it's like this, because there really is no, like, chorus in the song. It's like this really long intro leading into everything. So, like, you know, it leads off without any real resolution, which was how I felt at the time, you know, like, there was no real resolution for the situation itself, you know, like, just kind of had to get over it, you know. So yeah, that's what that song really meant. What about you, dude? What does 27 mean to you?
I agree with you. I mean, that song and just the whole EP in general, you know, I've been in those shoes before, you know, bad breakups and stuff like that, and I've realized it a lot now, especially too, you know, even listening to all the lyrics. And by the way, one of the best lyric writers ever, man. But yeah, no, I mean, it's just so raw. You know, you could feel those feelings in all the songs, you know, whether or not you could relate to it or you can't. You almost get a sense of what that person was going through when they wrote that song, and how the music was derived. And these are some of the most relatable songs, at least in my position as well, and I'm sure other people's as well. So I love everyone, man. They're all great.
All right, well, let's go on to Kids Are Gonna Love.
So Kids Are Gonna Love, it follows a little bit of a different spectrum, because it's like, you know, to me, Kids Are Gonna Love was more about, like, you know, trying to, I guess, like, make up for, you know, just how I was during, like, you know, the aftermath and the depression and everything. Like, I really stopped, like, hanging out with a lot of people, you know, during that time, and got so caught up in this thing, you know, where it was just like, you know, clearly wasn't working out for me, and, like, a lot of people knew at the end of the day it wasn't working out for me, but, like, I didn't really listen to anybody's advice and just, you know, dove in regardless. And, you know, so, like, Kids Are Gonna Love just kind of was, you know, more or less me just, like, giving a message to my friends of just, like, you know, like, I'm sorry for going through this shit at the time I went through it, and not being a little bit better to you guys during this time, you know, not listening, not caring, and not being there enough, you know. And honestly, you know, one of the reasons is probably, like, you know, my favorite track, and why I actually wanted to put it out as the lead single, was because it was the one single on there that didn't have to do with everything else, you know. No. It had a little bit more of, like, a positive storyline to it, you know, rather than, you know, just going through shit, you know. But yeah, it was a good one.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, you know, like you said, starting from a bad spot and then just building yourself to become better and better every day. You know, I feel like that's like you said, it's the one that's not as a little sad, but yeah, it has a good message behind it. And, you know, like I said, it's relatable. You know, and life sucks sometimes, man. You just got to keep pushing, keep rolling with the punches. That's all you can do. You know.
That's what music's for.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So the next one is Bleeding Out.
So Bleeding Out is a song that... essentially, that's probably, out of all of them, it's probably the oldest song that's on there. That was one of, like, the very first ones that I had actually, like, written for it. And, yeah, it's kind of back to, you know, that relationship standpoint, and back to, you know, this isn't necessarily about, like, you know, the process of, you know, the aftermath of getting over it. It's more about how I felt while I was actually in it, you know, to the point where it was just like, you know, I was not taking the best care of myself, you know, really just, like, letting a lot of things go in life, just had my own issues and just didn't really feel like dealing with them, because, you know, I thought for whatever reason being, you know, in this relationship would somehow fix all of it. And I think a lot of that too, like, you know, I turned around and, like, you know, tried to blame ultimately on the relationship itself for me not necessarily taking good care of myself. You know, which I kind of, like, correlated to, all right, like, you know, I'm just gonna let myself bleed out here, you know, and just, you know, go to waste or whatever. But I didn't, thankfully. I'm here now, which I'm very happy to be here now. But yeah, it was just like, as far as like, you know, all the songs go on the EP, like this one is probably the most raw in my opinion, because it was like what I was actually feeling and going through at the time, as opposed to what I felt like afterwards, you know, more retrospect rather than just like in it. But
I agree, and I think what ties into that as well is just like the everyday, day-to-day life, just going to your job, you know, coming home and having the same routine over and over and over again, on top of like already dealing with shit you have going on in your life with, you know, breakups and just bad stuff going on. It's just like it all kind of ties into just like bleeding out, man. You know, you get burnt out after a while, and you just need to kind of take it cool and slow yourself down a little bit, you know. And I feel like that's a big thing with the song too, because it is one of the slower, more folky songs on the EP. So it kind of just is a little bit of a break in between all the chaos, you know.
And next up we have Shed My Tears.
That one is primarily just focused on, you know, just like I'm over it now, you know. I've gone through this thing. I felt what I need to felt. I felt what I need to feel, and you know, I shed my tears, and now I'm kind of washing my hands of the whole situation. You know, and the reason why it's the fourth song on the EP is because it's kind of like, you know, about the overcoming of everything, you know, and getting to that point where it was just like, all right, I was finally able to breathe, and I was finally able to, you know, kind of feel like myself again after a very long time of not feeling like myself, you know, because obviously the song before that, Bleeding Out, you know, caters a lot more to just like going through stuff at the time. Like I wanted to let everybody know, like, okay, like even though I went through this thing, I was able to get over it, you know. And that goes with anything in life. It might be a relationship, it might be something like losing your job, like any rough circumstance that you're going through, like there is a light at the end of the tunnel, you know. You do get to a point where you finally like overcome all the bad feelings. And I was also going through a lot of mental health stuff at the time too, like, you know, I had to take some time off of work, you know, for all of it, and you know, it messed up a lot of things in my life, just like, you know, my money and shit like that. So like it was kind of just like, you know, at the point where I was like fully recovering from all of these things that had just happened to me, and it was just like, all right, like I've shed my tears for the people who aren't in my life anymore, and I'm just able to move on with a smile on my face now, you know. It's
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I like to quote Butters from South Park and like that whole thing, because there's an episode where he goes through the same thing. You know, he's sad and he goes through a breakup, and he pretty much just says, you know, like, I'm sad, but it's okay that I'm sad. You know, I'm glad that something can make me feel that deep and make me hurt that bad, because it makes you human, you know? Right. And it's all about how you express it, and I feel like that's what all these songs do. It's just expressing life and expressing shit that you don't want to talk about, and you kind of just sit back and listen to a song and reminisce and realize where you're at now, you know?
So when you release something like this and it's finally out in the world, and it's, does it feel complete? Does it feel like a catharsis of some kind, where it's like, okay, all this is out of me now in some way?
It definitely felt very like complete, you know, which was why, funny enough, like, you know, like I said, I wasn't even the person who really had the first thought to record it, but like once it was recorded, like I remember, you know, I was like a child, you know, on Christmas, just waiting to get my presents the next morning. Like, I could not sleep the entire night, just like waiting for this thing to come out. Like, we had spent so much time, so much work in the studio, and like, I had just gone through so much, you know, like personally to make it happen, that it was just finally like, okay, like, it's here. This is the moment that I can finally just like put all this shit in the rear view and just be happy with, you know, the way that things went. And it really did kind of give me that closure that I needed, that I wasn't really getting before, because like, you know, when I did go through all that stuff, like I didn't really get a chance to like talk to the person that I was going through it with, you know, it was very just, you know, like a one-off type of deal. So, like, you know, for me, writing these songs were the only real way that I had to express the feelings that I was still holding on to in a lot of ways. So to be able to release them out into the world kind of gave me my own closure in the sense of just like, you know, I don't have to keep it all inside anymore. You know, like it's there, people can listen to it, people can relate to it, and, you know, part of that just made me very happy, you know, about all of it. Yeah,
I feel like for me too, I mean, especially because I heard all the tracks obviously beforehand, like all acoustic and stuff like that, and like bringing them all together and just having that like punch in the face of like all the instruments combined on top of everything you already heard, and you already like kind of built yourself around that song, and then now you're just hearing this version that's like just smacking you, and it's I love it, man.
It was definitely a very magical moment.
Yeah.
You know, I've been making music for a lot of years now, and that was probably one of the best moments I ever had, was just putting out that first EP. Even when we just released a single, like, it was a great time, but the EP, like, nothing really compared to that, you know?
I agree, man.
So we got one last track is the title track, My Friends Don't Like You.
Yes. Probably, like, the name says, you know, just a lot about it already.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Which I kind of wanted it to be like that, to make it more or less, you know, self-explanatory, you know. It kind of just encapsulates everything, you know, that goes on in the EP from, you know, the beginning where, you know, like I said, 27 is just like the first realizations of things going wrong, you know. You fall off, you know, you don't talk to friends, and then, you know, you go through hard life situations, and then, you know, you have that point where you finally start getting over it, and then you have that point where you fully get over it, to where it's just like, okay, like, you know, instead of being upset or instead of being mad about this, it's just like, I just don't care, you know. And that's kind of what I wanted to say with that track, more or less, was just like, you know, no matter what she did to me, no matter what happens to me, like, I don't really care, because I'm gonna find a way to be happy, you know. And I have tons of friends, you know, and that's like really what picked me up during that time. Like, if I didn't have such good friends during the time where I was going through all of that stuff, like, I don't necessarily think the outcome would have been the same. Like, you know, it was the support that I got, not just from, you know, guys in my band and everything, but also just from, like, you know, other artists in the scene, you know, my friends that I've known for a long time, you know, like, they all really did their part in picking me up and supporting me through a lot of it, you know, and they all kind of were the ones telling me in the first place of just like, yo, you probably shouldn't do that, you know, but yeah, you know, like, I didn't listen to them, and I paid the price, but, like, they were all thankfully still there even afterwards, you know, because real friends just don't give up on you like that. So, you know, that's kind of why I wanted to name the track that, and just, you know, let everybody know, like, yep, this is how it is.
I feel like the whole thing in general, you know, is just a roller coaster of emotions. You know, especially personally for me, just because in the same boat as you, I've been through that stuff before. I've been through the heartbreak and losing friends and losing people who care about me, and it's all actions that were done by me. You know, so it's like, you know, you start off bad, then you get a little better, and then finally get to a point where you're just like, I'm good now, you know, and I'm gonna keep being good, and I'm gonna keep doing what I can do, and that's all that matters. You know, it's just a roller coaster of emotions, man. So it's a way to kind of just bear with that a little bit, you know.
I've always found it interesting how musicians can take something like the lyrics that kind of say something in that raw way, and then being able to use an instrument to carry that emotion and to describe it in a way and to kind of fit that. Like, it's such an interesting relationship, especially when it comes to a band, because you guys are friends, but you know, you're not going through the exact same thing, but you can relate to it. So then you have to take that and then channel that through an instrument. I just find that fascinating.
And on the musical side of it as well, you know, for me, it's just like certain melodies and certain things that people just do with their instruments absolutely fascinate me. And a couple months ago, I saw this band, I believe it was in Pittsburgh. It was Carpool Tunnel. And they had a lot of these little stops and things going on in their music that I was fascinated by. And that's what kind of gave me the idea with Shed My Tears. Towards the end, like in kind of outro of the song, there's this little break. And the drums cut out, and just all the string instruments just come together to create this nice little riff, and then it comes back in really hard. And like that was like one of the biggest things that I was just like, I want to do that in a song so bad. And like we got it to the point where like it sounded great, and I was so happy with it.
And that's one thing I really have to give it up to like every member of the band for doing their part in, because like when I write these songs, like, you know, a lot of times it's just like 2-3 chords that we're working off of to put everything together. But like, you know, in Mason's case, you know, for having never played bass before, and then just like crafting up these melodies, like, you know, Colin's lead lines and everything, you know, and then obviously Rich working, you know, how he does on the drums. It's like I couldn't have picked 3 better people who understood the assignment more, you know, in this case. Like every single song that I wrote, you know, ended up turning out exactly the way that I wanted it to sound, without me having to really do any of like the extra work. Like, you know, I've had like projects and stuff, you know, before where it's like I'll put full demos out, you know, where it's like, you know, I'll craft like, you know, electronic drums and play the bass and everything just to give people an idea of like, okay, this is, you know, what I want. With this, it was just like, you know, raw acoustic, just like voice recordings, and then it was just like, all right, everybody add their piece in. We'll talk about it, you know, some stuff like was reworked a little bit along the way, but for the most part, everybody just like understood what they were doing when it came to like adding that extra element, you know, which is cool because like, you know, everybody relates to it in a different sort of sense, but I feel like we all really were on the same page when it came down to that. You know?
Absolutely. And like, you know, songs that, like I said, I've heard them all before, like acoustic tracks and stuff. I mean, just everyone put in their piece in a different way that like is kind of indescribable. You know, like I would never be able to just come up with stuff that Rich did or come up with stuff that Colin did. And it's just like, you know, it's amazing to me how they just, it's just in their head and just put it on paper and play it, you know.
What makes a band a band.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah. Let's also talk about the cover art. I'll put it up on the screen for people if they haven't seen it.
So actually that's that one and Kids Are Gonna Love. I took both of those at McDade Park.
Okay, so you do your photos, okay. Yeah,
so I've always been just like, you know, I don't do it nearly as much anymore, but like especially when I was in college, I was like a very avid photographer. And for me, it's like, you know, I've never been great at like drawing or painting or anything like that, but, you know, I had just like a vision in my mind of like how I wanted things to look and like a certain aesthetic that I wanted to create with, you know, the cover art for both the single and the EP. And I just walked around like a bunch of places, you know, and I remember the one day I was going out to play a gig with my buddy, and we drove past this house. It was like all the way up in Lake Ariel, and we drove past this house, and at this house there was just this singular tree sitting there by itself. I think it was like in front of a lake or something, but it was private property, so like I couldn't get a picture of it. So like I remember that just sticking in my mind, and like immediately I was just like, I want to put something like that on an album cover. And walked around, you know, a bunch of different places, Naog, you know, a couple of places up like in the Poconos and everything. And, you know, ultimately it was, you know, just a day at McDade where I just kind of like spent the day just taking pictures and, you know, just shooting different things. And all of a sudden I just like walked past that tree, and I just like had like this voice in my mind, just like, this is it, you know, this is it right here. And then when I was editing it, like I wanted it to be particularly bright and colorful to kind of represent this, like, you know, almost like this new beginning kind of deal, you know. So yeah, like I was very happy with the way that turned out. And, you know, when I looked at it, you know, because I do weird shit, like I'll spend time, like, you know, before it was out, obviously, like I'd spend time listening to the album and then just looking at the picture. You know, I'm very much like kind of one of those people where it's just like I like visual art, you know, mixed in with music, you know, because like it kind of gives you a certain vibe and a certain feeling. And I remember just, you know, like I was editing a bunch of pictures just like listening to the album, and like I listened to the entire thing through just looking at that picture, and I was just like, this is definitely the one. Yeah.
That was like another thing almost with the name. It's like we kept coming up with different things, and it's like Chris is like, this fucking tree, man. It's screaming the EP. You know? We're like, all right, we'll do the tree.
Make like a tree.
And
Yeah, they do a very good job of putting up with my weird little foot down moments.
So, you guys are young, so you could speak to this kind of better than I could as a guy in his 40s. Is there still a strong desire from your generation to start bands and go out and listen to bands, or is it a bit of a struggle these days? Or do kids growing up now still love rock music the way that they did? Because you hear from all the old fogies, all the time about, oh, rock is dead, or the kids these days, they don't like it anymore, and it's all that hip-hop stuff and all that other kind of thing. So I would love to get the perspective of people who are actually growing up in this generation now.
Personally, in my opinion, I don't think that rock has really died. I think it's just evolved and changed into more of what, we see it as. Because, that's the thing is, somebody, you might find somebody in their 50s and 60s who listens to our EP and it's just you guys aren't making rock music. It's rock music to us still, but, same thing with, I'm not a fan of, 80s synth pop, or anything like that, but, to people during that time, that was pop music. That was,
Sure.
Kind of what they listened to. So, I feel like, and it's cool because, if you go decade by decade back through, rock and roll history, it's every single decade presented something, severely different than the last decade did, but the template was always there. And the attitude was, a big thing, too, because, in my mind, rock and roll is more just about, culture, the same way that, hip-hop in itself is kind of like a culture. Hip-hop has changed a lot, over the past couple decades from, the early 80s up to what it is now, but, and even a lot of the old school guys will say, oh, well, what they put out nowadays isn't rap, it isn't hip-hop, and it's just,
Right.
To the kids making it, yes, it is, to us making it, it is rock music, that's how we look at it as, and it's just, things change over time, everything develops, especially nowadays that you have the internet and you have social media. There's just, so much of a difference where it's I look at bands during their time Led Zeppelin, Led Zeppelin was a band that was just in my opinion so ahead of their time because they were just mixing together so many different aspects of music, from folk to early heavy metal to rock and roll and blues and jazz, and it's just people loved it at that time, when Zeppelin just started off as kind of a more basic blues rock band, you look at their early first two albums, it was very much blues based, but now you have this band that's really reaching out into all of these different elements, but again, keeping that same template of just never losing their sound, never losing sight of their ultimate mission which was to be a rock band. And we kind of look at it the same way. We, especially with this EP, we try to pull as many genres as we could into it, from soul to jazz to, funk to, literally whatever you could think of, we tried to put it in there. And I feel like we did a pretty good job of encapsulating all of it to the point where a lot of people might listen to it and just, you might listen to Bleeding Out and think that we do an entirely different style of music than you would if you were to just listen to My Friends Don't Like You, so but at the end of the day, in my opinion, it's still all just rock music. The attitude, the culture that goes along with it, it's all just rock and roll at the end of the day.
Yeah,
so.
I think it's a big perspective thing as well.
Yeah.
Everyone has a different outlook on music and how they interpret it and how, they perceive it with their emotions or, just different things they relate to within the songs or the genres, whatever it may be. I loved rap music growing up, and now I don't really like it as much, but it's just I was introduced to new things and found different emotions within different songs. So I think regardless of what genre you do it's all a perspective. I can still relate to a rap song like I might relate to a rock song or a country song, and other people hate some stuff like that, so it's all just perspective for me and how you interpret the lyrics and feel about it all.
And in my opinion, too, like, originality is a big thing, too. Like, everybody these days wants to be original. Nobody wants to redo what was done 20, 30 years ago in the past, you know?
Right.
That's, like, the thing is, like, things need to develop and things need to change in order for them to stay alive, you know? It's like, same thing as, like, evolution in the wild. Like, things can't survive if they're not willing to adapt, you know? I feel like, in a lot of ways, we just kind of adapted to the culture that's around us and, like, what people ultimately want to hear now, which might not necessarily be, you know, 80s hair metal, you know? So we're just trying to do our part, and I definitely think, like, you know, to go back to, like, you know, what you were saying before, I definitely think it is a little bit harder to make a band nowadays just because, like, music production is so much easier than it used to be. You know, it used to be that, like, the only way that you could really make music was to form a band, get signed, and then go to, you know, have that label basically put up money for you to go to a record studio. Nowadays, any 16-year-old kid with, like, $500, you know, can... even less, honestly, can can go out and buy their own home recording setup. And, you know, like, a lot of people think it's, you know, easier to make music by yourself or, like, just be in control of everything. You know, we don't necessarily see it like that, but I can see how, like, you know, the modern world of technology definitely caters more to, like, solo artists than it does for, like, bands and stuff like that, you know, especially with, like, sound systems and stuff. Like, you know, you have places where you could go to, like, it's not a jukebox anymore, you know.
Right.
You can do, like, you know, have these crazy sound systems that go all throughout the bar. You don't necessarily need to have to pay a band to be there every weekend, you know, for music. So I get a lot of why people would think that, but, you know, it's one of those things where it's just like, as long as you want it to happen, it can happen, you know.
And that's one of the biggest things, too, I realize, especially about our area, you know, because getting onto the music scene and everything, like, I didn't realize how much talent and how so many people are into music around this area too. I mean, there were bands that are huge now that I didn't even realize were from Scranton or Kingston. You know, if you look at Title Fight or Breaking Benjamin, it's like, I never knew that coming on to playing guitar and playing at different bars and everything like that. It's awesome to me. I love it.
Yeah, I don't feel like there's enough of an emphasis on that kind of stuff, and I do blame that a bit on kind of the media in general around here. I mean, in general, all over, because you look at, like, there's not enough outlets talking about these artists, and, like, letting people know that this is happening in their community. And people need, I think, to also be a little more curious and a little more, you know, everybody says they're a music fan, but it's like, are you a music fan, or do you listen to the same 10 bands that you did when you were in high school? You know, like, are you actually because I think a real music fan is a curious person who wants to have their mind opened up to new ideas and new sounds, and to constantly be looking for something new as well. You know, that you can still support the stuff that you did. It's not some kind of betrayal. It's not like those bands are going to be like, no, you can't like that. It's like, that's how this continues to happen, you know. I look at, like, the Grammys, and it's like the same 10, you know, bands over and over and over being nominated and awarded. It's like, okay, I don't think the Rolling Stones need another Grammy. I think they'd be happy to just, you know, like, put them maybe in a legacy category of some kind, and take them out of rock, and then give the rock category to, like, all up and coming bands that do not have that chance. You know, like, there's all of the people that are there all have, like, millions of dollars behind them too. You know, like,
like you said, they've already built such a legacy. So it's like, so I mean, do they really need more accolades? Do they need more, you know? And then, you know, you're combating the people who, you know, I see every time a concert announcement is made. What are the first top comments on any social media post? Who? It's like.
So in other words, you're announcing to everyone, I'm ignorant.
Yeah.
I don't want to know anything else. Instead of just looking it up. Like, that's the first thing I do. I see that and I don't recognize those names. I'm going to look it up and educate myself a little and this would be something I'd be interested in.
Even to bring it back to how I was saying carpal tunnel. Like when I went to go see them, I went to go see, originally it was Microwave and Origami Angel. And then there were two other bands on there. It was Carpal Tunnel and Heart Attack Man. And I'm like, I'd never heard these guys at all before. And like, I didn't even look them up prior to that. I was like, I just kind of want to be surprised.
Yeah.
And I loved them. Like, they gained a new listener just for me not even knowing who they are. But like you said, you don't even know yet.
Absolutely.
Just go check it out.
Show up early.
Exactly. Show up early. See the bands that you don't really know who you are. You might love them.
Yeah.
I remember I went to like one of the only big concerts I've ever been to was like, the Red Hot Chili Peppers. They played, down in Citizens Bank Park, and I could not believe the amount they had, like, and the acts weren't small, obviously. To play on a stage that big, you're not going to be small. But, like, before them was Thundercat and the Strokes. And the amount of people I saw just tailgating, like, out in the parking lot, waiting for the Red Hot Chili Peppers to go on before they went in the stadium while the openers are playing. I'm just like, what's the point?
Right.
Like, I go out to concerts, and everything because, like, I want to hear new music. I want to be put on to the next thing. And, like, I love up-and-coming bands more than anything. It's almost like there's this, like, magical little sense where you get to watch a band from the ground up, like, before they get really big and famous. Like, he was talking about Origami Angel. Like, I saw Origami Angel out in Albany. I got to meet the lead singer of Origami Angel for, like, a few brief moments. Like, never in any other setting would I have gotten to do that. And, like, they're one of those bands where it's like they're definitely going to blow up and be really big in the next couple of years. So it's like that opportunity might never come to me again, but it's like, their music has been great for me. And, like, the fact that I got to meet him because it was just in a small, intimate setting was, like, the coolest thing ever. Like, people don't do that enough, and, like, those concert tickets are cheap. It doesn't cost a lot of money to go and see somebody when it's like, the crowd max capacity is like 100 to 200 people.
Yeah.
Everybody wants to go to these big shows, these big events and everything with, like, all the lights and stuff. And it's like, at the end of the day, one of the best bands you could ever hear might just be playing at the bar down the street. You just have to be willing to go out and pay $5 to listen to them,
That's the biggest thing for me, too. I mean, especially smaller shows like that. I mean, you pay the money, but, like, you're not waiting to get your ticket scanned or anything. Like, you just, well, I mean, I'm sure you do, but you scan it, then it's a barrier. You don't have seating charts and stuff. It's just you go and you stand on the barrier and you're, like, right there.
That was one of our big things, when it came to, like, putting together shows and deciding, like, what kind of band we were going to be, because, like, so many bands, like, and not to discredit anyone because, like, everybody works hard, but, like, you have the bands that, like, do 3 to 4 hours worth of material. They might have a couple of originals, but their main thing is, like, covers just to keep people entertained. Like, when we make shows, we try to put, like, 3-4 bands on the lineup with us, so this way it's like, everybody can get a piece of the pie. Everybody can kind of see what's going on, and, like, all these bands that are up and coming, which we're up and coming too, we all get to kind of share the stage together, So it's like, we're definitely more into that style of, putting on shows, as opposed to trying to play for like 3 hours where it's like, we might do 30 minutes worth of originals and then like 2.5 hours worth of covers,
Right.
Yeah.
I had a big thing too is just making friends with everyone too. I mean, like I said, you don't realize the talent that comes out of here. So, you may not hear a band one day, but then, they hit you up for a show or you hit them up for a show, and then, you end up being best friends with some of these people, and it's like it's so cool to me.
Yeah, it's crazy. Like you mentioned Title Fight. Like, I interviewed those kids when they were just putting out Floral Green at the time.
Oh, okay.
And went over Ben's house and chatted for a while, and super nice. And I interviewed him like any other band, and it was interesting to me to see them blow up on a national level, mostly after they were kind of wrapped up and had kind of moved on and stuff like that. It seemed like they really, really caught on after that. But it's amazing to me that you can have, people around here who are like, that band right there, those kids are traveling the world right now, and they're selling out venues, in other countries. Yeah. And they come back here and people are like, who?
That's amazing to me.
Yeah. Unbelievable.
It's crazy.
I mean, hell, they almost erased the Hyperview mural.
Yeah. Geez.
That was so close, and it, to me, like, that represented how out of touch people are with the art around here.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And that there needs to be more awareness, because anybody else would have looked at that and went, "You're not touching that.
Yeah.
Are you kidding me?" Especially now with the artist, has passed away since then. So, like, it's amazing to me that people will travel from out of state just to come there.
Yeah.
They're not meeting the band or anything like that. They just want to get their picture in front of it.
Absolutely.
And then you had, city council people and whoever else just kind of rubber stamping. Oh yeah, sure, just paint over it and put an advertisement in its place. I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. Like, how do you not know?
Yeah,
like,
you don't realize what you're doing.
Yeah, and even then, it's just, even if it was just a piece of art, that's just how they treated it. It was just like, oh, that's just a thing on a wall. Like, it doesn't mean anything. It has no, just put an advertisement over it. Because, we don't have enough billboards around here. We don't have enough advertisements in every building. Like, give me a break.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
It's unreal, man.
So, Chris, you were also working on some solo music. Are you still doing that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I actually have a few songs that are ready for release. I've also been working pretty close with Joe Loftus on them. Right now, I'm not sure necessarily if I want to do a full album or like an EP for the first release. That's kind of what's been keeping me from putting out stuff right now. But it's definitely one of those things that still it still crosses my mind pretty frequently, and I'm still working towards it. It's in the works essentially, but still playing like solo gigs. Like, I'll do all of my originals while I do the solo gigs and stuff like that. And until then, it's just like part of my main thing is just like, if I want to go out and put out music, like, I really want to be able to come and back it up. I don't necessarily want every show to just be me out playing acoustic by myself. Like, I want to at least have some people that are willing to work with me to kind of make the full idea happen, which is still a work in progress. I kind of put the Delaware Ave stuff first on my plate when it comes to most things. Now that we have the EP out, though, it probably is something that I'll kind of re-gravitate my attention towards in the future. But it's been cool because me and Joe have been doing a lot of really cool stuff at a studio. The thing I like the most about solo stuff is just for me, it's kind of just a time to experiment with everything that doesn't necessarily get put into the band's perspective. When I'm writing for the band, it's very specific, kind of stuff that I'm looking for. I'm always trying to cater to the aesthetic, per se, of what I feel like our sound is, tone policing it, whatever you want to call it. But for the solo stuff, it's just I try not to put any barriers on what I'm doing. So it's I might have one song that's more folk inspired, and then another song that's completely pop, where it's just two totally different things, because at the end of the day, I'm just a person who enjoys making music and has fun doing it. So it's I'm always trying to push my limits and see where I can go with it.
And you produced your first track as well.
Yes, I did. Ivy just put out a track called, I believe it's called Ash. Yeah. We worked on that. I have a home recording studio. I was finally able to move into a place where I have a second bedroom, so now I have a room just dedicated solely to that for recording and mixing. And we put that one together, and she did an absolutely amazing job of just tracking everything, making sure that getting on me, making sure that I understood where she was coming from. I played a couple of different instruments on it for her, and we kind of worked hand in hand of just, I feel like that's the one thing about being a solo artist and doing, stuff by myself is I really understand how important it is to see her vision for the final thing and not just necessarily be oh, well, this will sound cool, let's just throw it in there. It's I have creative control to a certain extent, but it's more just her giving me, you know, some creative control. So
Sure.
But yeah, like at the end of the day, I think the track came out fantastic, and it was
I think it's great.
very much an honor to work on it. You know, as far as like, you know, first produced songs go, if I could have put out any other one, you know, it probably still would have been that one. Yeah.
All right, so Delaware Avenue have played a few. You played a few shows under the name now. Abide Coffee House in Wilkes-Barre did an event that you guys were a part of. Did I see that correctly?
Yep.
And you played the V Spot before. Tell us about some of those gigs you've played so far, and you know what goes into your set list.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the songs that we've already wrote, stuff with the EP and everything like that. Obviously, we like to throw some covers in there just to crowd please and everything. But you know, the biggest thing is just having fun. And you know, every time we play these shows or do anything, it's just we're so connected with each other. You know, whether there's breaks in the songs or anything we do, we kind of just are smiling and having fun. And that's the biggest thing for me, man. Like, these shows are just so incredibly fun to us. So every time we get the opportunity to play another one, it's like, let's do it. You know?
Yeah, I always look at it as like there's two parts, you know, to being a musician. There's the, you know, writing part and recording part, and then there's the performance part. You know, there's a lot of people who just do one or the other. Like, you know, there's guys who, you know, go to school just for performance and, you know, like can sight read and do all that stuff, you know, and just get paid to basically just perform music. Then there's people who sit in the studio, you know, do, you know, recordings and session work. But, you know, for me, it's like, you know, music is kind of encapsulated into both sides of it. You know, it's like, it's not enough to just make a recording and put it out there. Like, yeah, it's cool to have music out and it's cool to be able to say, check out my band on Spotify. But it's like, if you really want to check us out, you know, come see us play, you know, because there's a whole different type of vibe that kind of takes over when we're playing live for people, because it's like, you know, we get to not only share our music, but we get to make friends with people, build relationships, you know, with our fan base, kind of talk, you know, in the same sense of how we're talking right now about like the meaning of some of our songs, you know, like all of it, you know, it really just brings us that much closer with our fan base, and which is, you know, that much closer to each other, which is why we love playing out live, probably sometimes even more than we like writing, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, you get to meet us more on a personal level, too.
Yeah.
You know, you hear the music and you get a little sense of it, but, you know, you get to meet us more and see what we're like in person. It's all just comes full circle, man. It's fun.
Yeah.
I feel like that's also like the pure concert experience, you know, like you had described earlier, you know, people waiting in line to get their tickets scanned and people watching, you know, no, you can't sit in that seat, you gotta move in this seat.
Yeah,
there's everything is kind of just, you know, and then, you know, the lights and sounds and stuff, and that's all good, but it's like when you're sitting all the way in the cheap seats and everybody's an ant on the stage and you're basically just watching it on a screen, it's like it takes away from it, you know. It's really that personal experience that I think really that's what turned me on to the local music scene was you know, being able to talk to these people afterwards and like hang out. Yeah, let's go get a beer. Let's go, you know, talk about, you know, this kind of stuff. Like that's kind of stuff I think is I would take that over meeting any kind of celebrity any day.
100%.
Yeah. 100%.
So what songs are you guys covering in your set list, and what do you have planned coming up for your V-Spot show on Friday?
So we're personally big fans of the Backseat Lovers. That's actually one of the big bands that like inspired, you know, kind of like, you know, had like the most influence on our sound, and also like them in Pine Grove. So we're gonna do a couple covers by those bands. There's this one band called Catfish and the Bottlemen. They have some pretty cool songs, so we're gonna cover one of their songs too. Am I missing anything?
No, I think it was just those four.
Yeah,
it's all just things, you know, we also kind of like influence ourselves off of as well. So we always like to choose covers too that kind of fit in with our sound as well. So not only are they huge influencers to us, but, you know, it kind of fits in with our sound, and it kind of just all comes together nice for a nice set list.
Yeah, there's nothing weirder when I see a band do what they think is maybe a crowd pleasing song, and it's like, yeah, but this does not fit your vibe.
Yeah.
I get what you're going for here. You get people riled up because it's a song they know, but it's like, they could turn the jukebox on and hear
Exactly.
that.
You won't catch us going up there playing like any Metallica or anything like that. But yeah, like it's just more about like, because like part of what like made me want to write music in the first place was listening to other bands, like hearing how bands could
100%.
take their life experiences or other people's life experiences and turn them into song. It was just one of my favorite things to really study when I was a kid, and that's kind of what led me into songwriting in the first place. So it's like it almost wouldn't make any sense to go and play all these original songs if we didn't play some of the songs that also like inspired us to make them in the first place.
So, what you also have another show coming up. I actually ran into Aaron Fink the other day. His son's band was playing their first show.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that was kind
Shout
of
out
like
Gavin.
a full circle.
The Truth Live. Yeah.
It was fascinating to see that.
Yeah.
It's like, oh wow, talk about passing the baton and that sort of thing. So how did you end up opening for Aaron Fink and the Fury coming up? That's next month.
So, like you were saying, like, Gavin just played his first show. I've actually, we've all been good friends with Gavin for probably a couple of years now.
Okay.
I first met Mr. Fink, which is, I always still call him Mr. Fink to this day because, he's my friend's dad.
Right.
So I try to be polite. But, yeah, when I first met Aaron, like, it was at his house, like, Gavin had invited me over for a practice session, because we were just jamming, and he was very new to bass at the time, so we just kept it simple with, like, a couple of, like, punk rock songs, and, just sitting down in Aaron's basement, just making noise for a little bit, and just, over time, like, I kind of got to meet him, know him a little bit more, like, him and his wife, Cherie, they're both, like, amazing, generous people, and, yeah, they just, one day hit us up, to, give us the opportunity to open up for them, and, it was really cool, so obviously we just took it and ran with it, but, yeah, I've seen Aaron play a couple of times, just like, out at the Jazz Cafe, and I can't think of where else, but, yeah, like, his stuff is really cool, man. He does, like, a lot of really cool stuff, and then obviously, like, tours with Earshot and everything, so it's like, to even get the opportunity to be able to play with him when he's, so busy, just, like, with his own life is really cool.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, as soon as we got the text, I think we all just kind of, like, shit our pants a little bit. We're like, absolutely, we would love to open. So, yeah, no, we're incredibly excited for that. We've been putting in a lot of work with all these new songs we've been writing, so it's going to be definitely a cool opportunity over these next couple weeks to put that out and show everybody what we got,
So that is the Tap at Humboldt Beer Depot in Hazleton on Friday, March 21st. The V-Spot show we were talking about is Friday, February 14th. And you guys have some opening acts for that as well?
Yes.
We do.
Yeah, it's we're playing with Pollen. What is Peach Polaroid and Dimmer. We've played with Dimmer, I believe, once before. We haven't played with Pollen yet, but we're all really good friends with everyone in Pollen. And then Peach Polaroid, we're super excited to meet as well. All fantastic bands, so we're super excited to play with them for sure.
I think you saw Peach Polaroid at the anniversary show. Yeah, they were really good, man. Definitely. Like when anytime like I go and see a band and they have, you know, like a horn section, I'm just like, I'm always curious as to what's gonna happen. Yeah. And then I hear them doing like some of these crazy breakdowns and I'm just like, you know, like, holy shit, dude, like this is really cool stuff. And like their stage presence was awesome. Like I didn't really get a chance to talk to them too much because they were actually, funny enough, on their way to another gig right after that. Right. You know, they've been keeping busy, but yeah, they just seem like, you know, incredible dudes. I've been chatting with them a little bit, you know, just like through text message. They're all really nice, you know, and really down to earth. So I'm excited, man. They're good with music and good people. So I think it'll be an awesome time.
And I know Pollen has a lot of buzz about them as well.
Yeah, they're fantastic. Yeah, Caleb was actually our old drummer too. With their lead singer now. With he was our old drummer with the Crates still.
Yeah,
fantastic musician. All of them. Ian, Albert, Timmy as well. I mean, they're all incredible dudes and fantastic musicians. So it's going to be definitely an honor to share the stage with all of them.
Yeah, and then Dimmer's from Philly. The lead guy, Gary, I used to work with him at Fridays, like way back when. So he's originally from around here, but then like he moved down to go to Temple, and like I guess met these guys down in Philly, and they started a project together. So yeah, like we're really excited to play with them too. They're coming all the way up from Philly just to be here. So I think it'll be a really awesome night. Definitely giving me a reason to, like, get out of the house and, do some stuff, because I'm not normally the type that likes to go anywhere sometimes. But, yeah, I'm really excited for this show, man. Just great acts, and we couldn't be happier to be headlining all of it. It just means we really got to bring it,
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and that's why, like, the Peach Polaroid reminds me of the reason why you have to kind of force yourself out sometimes and go do it, because I had seen them a few months ago at Harry's. They were doing a college night.
Okay.
And I've been out of college for, let's say, a couple of years. And I knew I was going to stick out like a sore thumb in a place like that. But I was like, well, I haven't heard of them. I knew they were playing in Wilkes-Barre sometimes, but I hadn't gotten up that way in a bit. So I was like, well, they're playing. It's not far from where I live. I should just go out and see something new that I haven't seen before, a name that I don't recognize.
Absolutely.
And I was so impressed. And then after that, because I had taken videos and photos and stuff like that, they ended up showing up to the NEPA Scene open mic and introducing to other people and stuff. And then that's how they ended up on the 10th anniversary show that NEPA Scene did a few weeks ago. So it's just one of those things where that whole relationship never would have happened if I didn't just get off my ass that night and go and maybe make myself a little uncomfortable. Because it literally was not my crowd or my seed per se, but it was like my mission was like, I got to see something new. I can't just go and cover the same bands because it's easy to do that because I already know these people. I have to go and cover new stuff all the time, So, for me, it's my job. So I there's a little more motivation there.
Yeah.
But I just tell people in general, like, if you're thinking about doing something or you see something, you're like, maybe that sounds interesting. Just go. Just do it. You're probably 9 times out of 10 going to have a great time.
Absolutely.
All right, so what's next for you guys? What do you have planned for the rest of the year?
So right now our plan is primarily just booking more shows, and we're actually currently working on a full-fledged album now to kind of back up the EP. We're going to definitely release a couple of singles, throughout the year just to kind of give it a little bit more momentum, but I'd say that's like the next big thing that we're gonna have going on, aside from just like playing the regular shows and stuff. We're actually we've been working on a couple songs, but one of the album songs we're gonna be playing this weekend at the V spot. So that'll be a nice little surprise for everybody. Hear something that's not out yet.
Nice.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean that's it, man. We're just gonna keep grinding and keep doing our thing, and have fun doing it. That's the biggest thing.
Awesome. So we'll get some comments fast, and then we'll get out of here.
Sure.
Let's see. Mr. Gus the Savage just saw it last night. So let's go Delaware Avenue. He said, "What is?" We did talk about this a little bit, but if there's anything else you want to mention, what is the writing process like for you guys as a whole versus what it'd be like writing for yourself?
So definitely like writing for myself, like I said, I try to go a little bit more off the cusp of just like, break out of my comfort zone, try new things, experiment a little bit more, do things that I'm not necessarily always familiar with because, not only am I trying to achieve new things, but I'm also always trying to become a better musician myself. And you never know, like, messing around with something different, like, how I came up with all of the, you know, songs for the Delaware Ave EP was just like, you know, I had been experimenting with all these like different jazz chords and like dominant stuff, and like, you know, couldn't really find a way to like make it into my own music. So like, you know, it found its way into, you know, all of that. So it's like, I think, you know, being a musician, one of the biggest things you can do is like, you know, experiment and just kind of always see what's new for yourself, and you never know where it might, you know, poke its head out. But when writing with a band, it's, you know, you have to take everybody's opinion into account, and, you know, understand that not everything that you're going to write, even if you feel like it's the greatest thing ever, is always going to be something that somebody else loves. You know, you might spend hours making something and just, you know, bring it to the band, and it's just like, well, we just don't like that very much, and that's okay. You know, you have to understand that when you're working with other people, you know, there's always going to be a give and take. You might not necessarily like what somebody else puts on the table, and that's fine too. You know, you work it out, or you find somewhere to meet in the middle. You know, like I said, it's more of a democracy than anything. Like, we all make decisions, and we all decide what goes into our final product at the end of the day. This way nobody feels like, oh, well, like, he just wrote this entire thing, and, like, you know, I didn't really get a say in any of it. You know, like, what we put out is what we're all happy with at the end of the day.
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
And let's see, we got Summer. Who's that?
It's Butter. I'm talking about Butter. That part.
Love South Park. Huge fan.
So I just felt like a bunch of butter emojis.
So you're always feel free to jump in if you have any of your own questions or anything like that.
For sure. I think you... Oh, there you
No? You got one more? We got one more? Was that what you were going to say?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, so Maury B., who I also saw yesterday as well, he's part of Atari and Mari we had on the show. He said, which do you find as an artist more satisfying, playing a successful live set or recording a song that you're proud of?
It's really tough to gauge that because, you know, at the end of the day, I would say probably more recording a song that I'm proud of, because the thing is there's a lasting feeling of accomplishment, because like you can always go back, you know, 6-7 months down the road, listen to that song again and always be reminded like, wow, this was something that I did, you know. Whereas like with shows are more of like, you know, that kind of like momentary adrenaline rush that just hits you when you play a really good show and you're just like, man, like we fucking killed that, you know, like it's great, but like it wears off, you know, and you can't really go back to that moment. The only way to really go back to it is to play another show. So like, you know, where it's like, you know, once you record something, like, you know, it's not going to change, you know. When you go back and listen to it and however long, it's still going to be the same recording that you did. And you grow, you know, you feel different ways about it too as you know, have time away from it. You know, your taste changes, but some stuff really does just get to be timeless, where it's like I have songs that like are sitting on my computer that I wrote when I was probably like, you know, I want to say like maybe like 19, 20 years old, so like 7 years ago now at this point, that I'll still go back and listen to and just be like, man, like I really love that, you know? Like,
yeah, I agree, man. You know, I mean, like you said, playing live shows, it's like a boost of adrenaline, but having something out recorded that you can just keep going back to, and it's like, you love it. You love every second of it.
and to show people too is like always awesome.
Oh yeah, of course. It's like here it is right here.
That's the thing, is it's hard sometimes to get people to come out to a show to see you perform, you know, like when you have it right there on Spotify, it's just like, oh, here, listen to this, you know.
Right.
Yeah, you can just give it to them right then and there, you know. So that's always a nice little thing.
Yeah. Especially for those people who always say they're going to come out and then they never come out.
Exactly. Well, just check it out right
now.
You've no choice.
Yeah.
Play this, get our streams up.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, you got 3 minutes?
Exactly. Come on. You got the time. All right. And Maury agrees with you. So there we go.
All right.
All right. So thanks so much, guys. Let me read over what we've gone over one more time. My Friends Don't Like You, the debut EP from Delaware Avenue, is available now on all major streaming platforms. And Delaware Avenue is headlining at the V Spot in Scranton this Friday, February 14th. And they're opening for Aaron Fink and the Fury at the Tap at Humboldt Beer Depot in Hazleton on Friday, March 21st. So thank you all for tuning in. Thank you guys for spending some time with us.
Thank you for having us,
man.
Absolutely.
It's been a pleasure,
man. Yeah. Summer, anything else you want to add?
I'm good.
All right. So we will see you here hopefully next Wednesday at the same time. And thank you for tuning into the NEPA Scene Podcast. If you enjoyed the conversation, please please share, do all the good algorithm things so we can get out there and expose people to new music. And if you like these guys and you're a fan, which obviously we have a bunch of those in the comments, show your support by getting the interview out there to more people. So, all right, thanks again, and we'll see you here next week. Have a good night, everybody.